Well, because the thing about Assad Femboy, right, is now that he's in exile in Russia, he's become a gamer. And as we know, becoming a gamer leads to becoming a femboy, leads to becoming a trans girl. So in a matter of time, we are going to see the most sort of like mustache-targeted electrolysis you've ever seen in your life.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like they've built a red light mask that's perfectly upper lip shaped that does electrolysis. But the issue is, like, at that point, if you're Putin and you've got like your compound of sort of, Western embarrassments like Gerard Depardieu and Edward Snowden and now Assad and the rest of these guys and Jan Marsalek, right?
Great sitcom pitch immediately.
Oh God,
Snowden, what's going on in there?
You have your meeting with like your, with the Gang of Four, and then you just notice like, Assad, is that a tail poking out of your...
Wow, your skin's looking really soft lately, man. You smell different.
Honestly, if it was going to be anyone, my money was on Snowden.
The reason why he did all of that stuff was being the one cisgender employee at the NSA.
He's the world's first actual case of like reverse discrimination.
Yeah, every day he got shoved into a locker by a bunch of 6'2" women, and after a few years of this, he was like, I've had enough.
I'm walking. I'm out of here. I'm going to Russia where I won't be bullied by trans women. Welcome to Niet God, Niet Mayor. No. Hello, everybody. Welcome to TF, where we have just... Hussein has just detonated the phrase Assad femboy on us immediately before we started recording.
Yeah. I found it on Instagram under a news article, and I found it very funny, and it's been in my head all day, and so I made it into a funny screen name.
How to achieve Assad femboy mode aesthetics.
So it's like you get like one of those like one of those guides where it's like, all right, so basically what you need to like do a lot
You're working out upper lip all the time, nothing else.
You got to be working upper lip. You got to be extending your head.
It's the opposite of mewing.
You got to be meowing.
Weaken that jaw, sister. Weaken that jaw. I mean, that is real. That is actually good advice for any trans one. Anyway, yeah. So I love the idea of the sort of compound of Western failures, and just one of the windows just has like gamer RGB lighting.
Hey, how come so many cat ear headbands are getting delivered here now that are in the strangest shape? These are bespoke cat ear headbands for.
Yeah, thank you, former President Bashar al-Assad, for being the sole purchaser from my Etsy store, where I make cat ear headbands for the weirdly head shape. Actually, no, there was another guy in like Scottsdale, Arizona, but it's either here nor there.
No, he was just infiltrating.
I just remembered, and I don't know why this is, but like Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit has been wanting a Russian passport for a very long time, and he hasn't got one. And I'm looking for like the reason why, and I can't find like. It's just like he's been banned from Ukraine.
He's inspired by how the offensive in Luhansk keeps rolling.
Well, he was apparently trying to buy a house in Crimea, and he had apparently also been invited to move to Russia.
Well, they do that kind of like cultural outreach, but it tends to be for the more cancelled among Western celebrities. I'm amazed Russell Brand hasn't had like an offer that he's considered seriously. That he's going with the Jesus thing. That's fine, but like arguably you get a better quality of life just going to Russia, and you get to like wrestle with Putin or whatever.
I think I'm just very confused about like who Russia sort of gives their passports to, because there are like they're not giving it out to anyone, and that's the thing, because like Fred Durst not getting a Russian passport.
But Steven Seagal is.
Also, the other thing is, Durst, correct me if I'm wrong, Hussein, Durst has been trying to get one for a while. Like, it's been like 10 years.
He hasn't mentioned it for a while, but also like Fred Durst, I don't know if Fred Durst has become woke, but he's
pretty
like
woke, I think. Yeah.
He's like got some fairly progressive like opinions on trans people, which I only discovered because apparently he said them while streaming.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he's a woke ally, Fred Durst, and therefore not welcome in the territory of the Russian Federation.
Yeah, he also had a cameo in I Saw the TV Glow, a film I haven't seen, but apparently,
Fuck. Okay. Yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and also like obviously Limp Bizkit are having a bit of like a renaissance at the moment. You know, they're sort of running on a high in a way that a lot of the other new metal bands are not really able to do. So yeah, like I don't know whether that's related to the fact that he didn't get a Russian passport and he was just like, okay, fuck it, I'm going woke.
This is bullshit. I wanted my house in Crimea. There are now at least 3 genders.
Yeah, but it is just, I am just really fascinated about like who, because I guess like when Snowden went to, there was like a period of time in the early 2010s where like he was giving out Russian passports to like Western dissidents, right? And the idea sort of being that like, okay, if you're like going to critique the West from like a national security point of view, you know, and obviously there are like political reasons why that was afforded, right? And there was a lot of criticism leveraged to like Snowden, etc., for doing, like Assange as well for doing that.
Yeah.
But now it's just like, yeah, if you're like a fucking shithead, but also you're not, you got to be a shithead, but you can't be too embarrassing. And that's why I'm kind of curious as to like, is Russell Brand like too embarrassing for Russia?
I saw a film, Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Very annoying.
Get him to Greek. Why is this?
It's insults to our Orthodox culture.
So we got some stuff to get through today. We're going to be talking about the Netflix WB merger, or will it be? Maybe it's going to be Paramount and therefore another jewel in the Ellison crown. But we're going to be talking about that on Thursday. Today we have an update. Most importantly, this is so important. We have an update on the Orb Watch.
It's some orb music.
Orb music.
I'm so excited. Were you following who won the FIFA Peace Prize this year?
You know, I follow this every year that they've done it, and so you know, as an avid sort of FIFA Peace Prize watcher, I was not surprised to learn that one Donald John Trump.
I was going to say I did make a big bet that Haruki Murakami was going to win this year. Disappointed me again.
Yeah, so that's right.
Why don't they ever nominate any women for the FIFA Peace Prize? This is bullshit.
Well, I think the thing about the FIFA Peace Prize is that like, you have to kind of go on the campaign for it. Like, it's mostly about like what dinner parties do you go to in the run up.
Yeah, it's like, do you like the 50 oldest guys in like the football equivalent of the Académie Française like you? And if not, then you're cooked.
People sort of fail to admit that Donald Trump only won it like very, very like on a margin, and it was like actually like a VAR that resulted
he won
in
a
win.
goal difference.
Well, I think that the key is, I think like a lot of people are like, oh, the FIFA Peace Prize is so political, and like Trump only won because it was his turn, and like there are so many amazing. Well, hold on, what do they say they give it for? Unwavering commitment and special actions. There are so many unwavering
commitment, and I love special actions.
And there are so many that are like actually boundary pushing that are done by like people who aren't, I'm just going to say it, older white men, right? And they're always overlooked by FIFA. So, no, what has happened here is Gianni Infantino, Johnny Baby,
one of our favorite European bald men.
Oh, God.
I would say in many ways, Trump's most sort of high effort lickspittle, right? Because like he's got a lot of sycophants around him. Of course he does. He's the president. But like for some reason, this one Italian man has just really decided to get his tongue all the way up there. And so on that basis has invented a kind of Stalin Prize, like a kind of parallel Nobel Prize, in order to give to him. And I'm not so interested in who won the FIFA Peace Prize this year. I'm interested in whether they ever do it again and who they give it to if they do.
Well, they have a number of things they could do, right? They could be like, hey, the FIFA Peace Prize is directed at whoever we need something from. Like, it's going to be MBS next year, and then maybe it'll be Trump Jr.
I liked it better when it was a more transparent outreach called the Sepp Blatter like peace suitcase full of euros.
So, but what I think is true about Gianni Infantino is that he has absolutely nailed how to like get Trump to do things for you without necessarily bribing him.
Yeah. Zelensky should be paying attention. He should be awarding Trump different kinds of Ukrainian medals.
What Zelensky should do if he wants to, like, you know, get America back behind, back behind Ukraine, is he should just award Trump a Jason Isaacs in the Death of Stalin amount of medals for like specific battlefield actions. He'd be like, congratulations, Donald Trump, you are now the #1 drone countermeasure expert in Kharkiv.
I think if Donald Trump had the option to wear a Ukrainian dress uniform to everything he was going to from now on, he would do that.
Mm-hmm. What Infantino said, which I love, is, again, like, he knows how to talk to Trump, where he was like, this award is being presented in recognition of his exceptional and extraordinary actions to promote peace and unity around the world. Infantino then turned to Trump and he took the stage to accept the trophy. He says, "This is your prize. This is your peace prize. There is also a beautiful medal for you that you can wear everywhere you want to go."
Incredible. Just lay it all out in front of him.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the thing is, like, all of this stuff, every kind of like international prize that's awarded is always like cynical. It's always political, right? Of course it is. But we're now seeing that politics is breaking down into the weird faster than those sort of like prizes and stuff can metabolize it, which means I think we can tie this into another example of that. The Eurovision Song Contest, right? Like now fracturing because the EBU sort of forced through Israel staying in it. The obvious answer, the compromise answer, how does Eurovision keep going? You give that one to Donny as well. Doesn't even have to do a song, but I'd love to see it if he did.
I think it would not be hard to get him to at least be involved in planning America's entry into Eurovision.
There is no one as gay as Donald Trump. Who is, you know how like they said of Catalan that he was the worst man unhanged, right? Like Donald Trump is the gayest man ungayed, and I seriously think that like okay, after you give him the Ukrainian colonelcy with all the medals and whatever, and we resolve the war in Ukraine's favor somehow, right? The next thing to distract him from doing any more evil shit, you just put him in charge of American Eurovision. He would love it. He would be thrilled.
He would every day he would show up wearing all of his medals and his FIFA Peace Prize medal, and he would honestly direct a pretty good performance.
Yeah.
He would direct a good performance.
Yeah, I mean, it would be kind of like he's a musicals guy, so I think it would fall in that direction. But maybe that's okay. You know, maybe that's what Europe's been waiting for.
Look, Europe has long ago left its tradition of patter singing for like the avant-garde, leaving it largely just to Broadway to carry the torch.
It's true.
It's just like how techno bounced between Detroit and Berlin to like really become what it was. It's just like that. It's just like that. It'll sort of be a very distinctly European sound. Like I think that I actually would award him the FIFA Peace Prize for finally like uniting the world by making modern European patter singing. But yeah, basically FIFA just gave him the C. Montgomery Burns Award for Outstanding Achievement in the Field of Excellence and or the C. Jonathan Baby Award.
And the thing is, every other sort of like a person that FIFA needs to butter up is too stupid to fall for this. Like, I don't think that the Cassowary Royals would be like, oh, thank you for the congratulations on most day laborers thrown off a stadium by accident award, you know, because they have stuff already, but for Trump it's never enough, and so he needs the trinkets, he needs the baubles.
He likes shiny things. He's got ADHD. I totally get it.
Yeah, that's true.
He needs his orb.
I wish I would be awarded the FIFA Peace Prize. So like he gets, what does he get? He gets like a trophy, he gets a medal. Is that like a cash award with it, like the Nobel?
No, it's just a certificate. I think the certificate probably contains bribe instructions also.
It's just like the first award that you have to give your Swiss bank routing number to accept.
It's the first award it's always awarded to two individuals. It's awarded to the individual and an unrelated shell company. Yeah, but also I like number one. The other thing is though, it's an orb. They've given him another orb. Football has given Trump another orb, and I think that's beautiful.
He always returns to the orb. It's the most noble form.
The guy loves a sphere. First of all,
he does.
He can't get enough of a sphere.
It's mathematically perfect. You know.
He then said he's basically stopped every war that could have happened.
That was
being
nice,
like, yeah, it was pretty good. He says so many different wars we were able to end, in some cases just before they started.
Well, I think the funny thing is, one of the things he likes to reference for that is Thailand and Cambodia, which he did in the most kind of indelicate possible way of just like threatening them both with worse tariffs until they agreed to stop shooting at each other. That has now, that might be cooked already. So another victory for the world's greatest peacemaker.
Yeah, brilliant.
Doing the Tom Lehrer bit where it's like, I stopped doing satire when Kissinger won the Nobel Peace Prize, where it's like, I stopped doing satire when Trump dishonored the FIFA Peace Prize.
But if the moment that like a conflict erupts between Cambodia and Myanmar, FIFA should strip him of the Peace Prize. You can no longer wear this medal anywhere you want to go.
Only some of the time.
Yeah. But this is also another stupid prize. I guess in a segment I'm calling stupid prizes. This is just a little addendum before we go on to the main meat of what we're talking about. You remember how Alex Karp was
you mean visibly neurodivergent, you piece of shit? Like, he was fucking ableist. You mean how Alex Karp was like visibly having an ADHD moment on stage, just like all the ADHD moments I have, where I like sniff a lot and talk way too loudly.
Yeah, it's like one of the symptoms of ADHD is you're more susceptible to head colds, and so he just was very sniffly. Of course the I should have seen it. I should have really seen that clearly what was happening when Alex Karp was unable or unwilling to sit still, slurring his words and talking grandiosely about how everyone at the New York Times is fake to him. Definitely that is classic ADHD. I mean, the thing is with teachers, you have to watch in your class, and like there are a lot of, especially little boys will present this way, where they will also be fidgeting in their chairs and talking about how, New York Times deal book is very
unfair to them. Yeah,
exactly. So they've said, again, in what can only be described as a succession level bit of corporate PR damage control, they've been like, okay, what are we going to do? Go on the offensive. We're going to say, oh yeah, well, Alex Karp is neurodivergent. And he went on to say in the announcement of this Alex Karp Neurodiversity Fellowship, where it's worth like $200,000 over a year, he says the neurally divergent like myself will disproportionately shape America's future. And that this is a recruitment pathway for exceptional neurodivergent talent. However, the job description then has to state, this is not a diversity initiative.
Yeah, I love to get the Alex Karp brain goodening scholarship. Makes me feel great, I imagine.
Yeah, it's the Alex Karp gamer autism rather than like autism that like causes you.
First question. Let's see that Hearts of Iron modelist, Playboy.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Hearts of Iron. It's the Alex Karp Award for kids who can game good, not the Alex Karp Award.
Weirdly, it's been awarded to Bashar al-Assad.
Yeah. Then when Assad actually came in for the face-to-face interview, they needed to be like, oh shit, all right, you're too diverse.
Yeah.
This is too much diversity. We can't do it. Anyway, so this is stupid prizes. Two very stupid prizes that have either been announced or distributed. This is a pretty
good stupid prize. I like this one.
Oh yeah, fucking love that. Another quick bit of news before we get into what is basically our main segment for today, which is something I've been meaning to talk about for a little while, which is, of course, going back to something I think we're just going to come back to again and again over the next, I hope not too long, because I hope something happens that makes these organizations just not exist, and that we get a, like, I don't know, I want to say like full Presbyterian temperance movement about gambling in the sort of global north. But Kalshi and Polymarket are, of course, back in the news because Kalshi has a strategic partnership with CNN and CNBC that will basically like give odds on all of the news events that they're talking about.
Yeah, great. Fantastic. I mean, to be fair, I was thinking for certain news events, like for instance, Trump getting his like part of his ear shot off, the Polymarket sort of ticker on the bottom that's like, yo, did that shit really happen? Did they get him? That would enhance that experience for me, I think. Maybe also if we could get like a little like Subway Surfers vertical in the side of like all news channels. And then also I could go on my phone during that. That would probably kind of complete the experience for me.
Yeah, it's like you should be able to get like detailed 26-way parlays on like how many bullets did the assassin fire? Was the assassin femboy Assad?
I don't know if we have an answer to whether or not the Trump would-be assassin was femboy pilled or not. And I think that's a great shame. You know, this is what happens when you put a podcaster in charge of the FBI.
Yeah, the data, according to Axios, will be featured on CNN's air through a real-time ticker that can be referenced across platforms when any journalist makes a prediction.
Really? I was joking. Okay. Fuck.
No, that thing you were joking about is the thing that they're actually doing. Pretty good.
Damn. Okay, cool, fine. That's fine.
Cynically, it's a very smart way for CNN because the issue with a lot of kind of broadcast news places is that obviously they've been like hemorrhaging views, right? And the question has always been like, how do we sort of like bring more viewers to watch the news? Now, you could argue, well, you could make the news better. You could make it like more informative. You could, you could take your viewers seriously.
I'm hearing all of that, but let me put this to you: that shit costs money.
Well, yeah, it's like, well, what if instead, you turned everyone into Howard from Uncut Gems? Someone was like, yeah, that actually sounds like a good idea, and I think actually, like, I don't know, because like I was thinking about this today, and I was just like, well, whenever like attacks happen, and you're sort of waiting for information, like if you go on any social media platform, though I guess like mostly like X or whatever, but like there's always that sort of period of time where basically you have everyone sort of speculating like what the race of the attacker was, right?
Yes, absolutely. Like they bullied the cops into releasing that information. So now we can put a Kalshi thing over that's like white ?
Well, this is it. And now it's just like, well, if you guess the ethnicity, then you can win some money. And if you guess how many bullets were fired,
26-way parlay that's like, because I nailed the precise like micro ethnicity. Tajik, calling it now.
This guy's like, he's Croatian. He used a crossbow. It struck 4 people. 1 of them died. 2 of them had minor injuries.
It's like weirdly, like one guy put an outside bet on one of those people getting shot by the police by accident, and that paid out big time.
No, it's crazy. I just didn't expect him to be like, I didn't expect him to be half Basque.
And obviously, this won't lead to any problems at all. This won't lead to like really bizarre things happening that you find out much later on. And I'm not saying that Kalshi will do this, but I'm basically saying that like, we've seen how pernicious so much of like the gambling tech has kind of become. And we've also seen how permissive respective Western governments have been about letting these gambling companies like basically take over what's left of public life. Like I don't watch ads very often because, I don't like seeing white people on advertisements. That was a joke. That's a joke, just in case anyone wants to clip that. That is a joke.
The studio immediately raided on suspicion of like incitement to racial hatred.
But like I was watching like TV the other day, and they're obviously advertising like Sky Sports and stuff. And one of the ways that they advertise Sky Sports is like that they have integration with like one of the big gambling companies. And the way that they present it is very much just like, oh, like, if you want to increase your fun at the sports game, you can gamble. You can treat footballers like horses now.
Cool. Do we treat horses well? I assume we do.
But it's like the way in which they now present gambling as sort of being kind of like integrated into like your social experience. And this is the way that I think that we should see Kalshi, and we should see like its successors and its competitors afterwards. It is not like a gambling kind of platform in and of itself, but it is a reflection of the way in which like the continued gamification of social relations, the continued transactional approach to the way that like we are encouraged to make friendships and relationships, and the ways in which and like facilitating that being manipulated. We're going to see, I really do think that we're going to see a lot of weird stuff happening, partly as a result of like gambling tech basically like making every type of social experience you have one in which you can sort of capitalize on.
Oh, completely. I mean, and the thing is, right, is that these companies are, and I think this comes as no surprise to anyone who listens to this podcast, these companies are incredibly political, nakedly political. Polymarket, for example, and I believe Kalshi as well, were, basically putting their thumb on the scale of the New York mayor's election without doing that in any kind of illegal way, because they would just report, Kalshi odds are suggesting that Zoran only has an 8% chance of winning, even after he got the Democratic primary nomination, right? It's that and to make it, that shapes reality. It's basically you're able to do polling, but by who owns the most cryptocurrency, because that's how these betting markets work. You're buying and selling prediction contracts with cryptocurrency. You're not placing bets on outcomes with money, which is how they're legal. Now, the only thing keeping them from being legal and utterly pervasive in the UK is the extremely powerful gambling lobby. That's it. That's all. But because these companies are so political, right? Like Trump Jr. is a strategic advisor to Kalshi, Andreessen Horowitz is their biggest investor. Like they are undoubtedly like politically oriented organizations. They're also something you can do. For example, you can use Kalshi to bet on when the Department of like the United States will next murder a Venezuelan fisherman. You can do that. And so what's to stop someone who works at the Department of War in the United States trying to push the murder of a Venezuelan fisherman to a certain date so that some friend of his who's placed a very large outside bet on Kalshi or Polymarket will be able to, cash in. What's to stop that? Nothing at all. Yeah. And like there have also been wagers, for example, on when will the IPC classify Gaza as experiencing a famine this year, or will there be a mass population relocation in 2025, and so on and so on. All right. Here's the main thing I wanted to talk about today is a segment I've referred to as the callow youth of Nigel Farage, or I can't believe the Send Them Back party is teeming with avowed racists, or British journalism yet again wins the Credulity Award.
Are you telling me that Dulwich College in southeast London is a place deeply steeped in racism and bigotry? Do you expect me to believe that that's plausible? That's a plausible thing to happen in a private school in southeast London.
A place where, like, if you go into the main hall, because I got married in Dulwich College, and like
you did,
the main hall is just like there are portraits of just like colonial officers.
When I went there, I once spilled a strawberry milkshake on one of those because my poker game got interrupted. It's a deeply strange place. Once again, fate has conspired to give me some insight personally into the news. And yeah, of course, he was a horrible Nazi prick at school. Like, he's a horrible Nazi prick now. You don't need that much investigation into this. But also something
to bear in mind is that he's still bullying children now. Because I was like, my initial thing was just like, okay, fine. Like, not to sort of say that, he was a kid and you shouldn't matter, because, I think ultimately that's up to people's discretion, whether that's like, something that they would, whatever your sort of thing is. But the point is, like, when this story sort of came out, and the thing that like journalists weren't saying is that like, he's trying to sort of say, on the one hand, he's trying to say that like, oh, I never bullied these kids, it was just banter, etc., etc. But it's like, during this time where he's trying to defend himself and claim he's not a racist, he's putting out, or he's like posting videos or reposting them anyway on like his X account. And one of these videos is like a school in which like, and I think it's just like a primary school. I don't even know, it might even be like a primary like special education school. And like the kids who are featured in this video are like mostly like either South Asian or they're black, but they're kids. But the main thing is like they are kids and they are British kids. And he posts this video basically saying that, oh, is this what you want your schools to look like? Or this is what our schools could look like, without sort of obviously substantiating like, well, what do you mean by that? And obviously no one with high paid media jobs are sort of willing to ask him that. But it's like, yeah, you're still racially bullying kids. Like, you are now like what, fucking like 60 something, and you are still racially bullying kids.
It's always rough when someone peaks in high school, and
they just do the same thing. I have a buddy from school who's very much like that. Like, he kind of like he's
super racist.
I can't wonder gay super racist. No, I'm just messing around. But he does have this like one line that he says, and I'm not going to say it because like I don't want to out him to like the two like schoolmates of mine who listen to the show, but they'll know who he is. Like, he'll just say this one line that he kind of like he came up with when he was 16, and at the time people thought it was funny, and we are now in our mid 30s and he's still saying it.
Oof. That's rough.
Boy.
But with Nigel Farage, it's just like his line is being racist. So
his line is just full force saying the word. Yeah.
He's also very much still saying it, just in ways that are a bit more media trained, so he can sort of just avoid being seen by anybody.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the thing is, right, it's not so much interesting to me, or it's not a surprise to me that Nigel Farage used to be racist, because again, he still is, right? What's interesting to me is
that's a good version of the Mitch Hedberg joke.
Yeah, he still is, but he used to be as well. No, it's we've now been given kind of the imprimatur of the British like kind of press, or at least the Guardian, sort of the last liberal paper left, really, to notice this. And it's so obviously like a Labour attack line to be like, we went back and we did the easiest opposition research in the world. And I think you're deeply naive if you imagine that some version of this hasn't been sitting in a file for maybe a decade at this point, if not more. But now it's the full court press of, we have, 20 witnesses who saw you doing the racist shit that you do in public every day.
Yeah, but in a way that hasn't been shaped to fit neatly into one of the acceptable wings of British sort of public discussion.
Well, like genuinely, right? I remember hearing about Farage in the Dulwich College Combined Cadet Force, which is an institution that exists, like on exercise, marching through villages in the home counties, singing like Nazi marching songs. I remember reading about that in, I want to say Private Eye, probably 10 years ago. And I don't think it was that no one was interested in that as a piece of news. I think it was that was being sort of kept for a later date. And the later date is now, right? That it's gotten to the point where a reform government looks like a serious possibility. And so we're going to have to start leaking the stuff that, we've been keeping back. And again, the least surprising thing in the world, but also I think it's one of these things. I think it is another piece of Morgan McSweeney's Jupiterian mind, right? Not to necessarily attribute it to him, but whoever it is, right? Whatever kind of labor right politics is happening here, is you really sort of attack him on this when he's sort of at his electorally strongest, and he's going to flounder because of course he does. But there's a decent chance that what you just do is establish a norm that like, yeah, you could just have been a racist bully at school until the age of like 18 and continue on that course for the rest of your political life. And that's fine, actually. Also, there's this idea, right, that it's like, well, it's not as though he was a racist bully who then sort of changed, it's been a pretty fucking straight through line. All that's happened is he's gotten more refined. Yeah, he's learned that he can't sing the songs about the National Front in public.
We can do it in private, but also I think the other thing is like my sort of like take on the whole reform thing in terms of like what it represents on a sort of political level is that like what Nigel Farage has basically done what his big realization is that like you can build an entire political movement around being a cunt. And by that, I mean, like, you can sort of take, things that we've talked about on this show for many, many years, a lot of the time where it's just like, well, for a long time, like the sort of consensus in British politics is that like things cannot materially get better, things can only get worse. And the sort of, the bit of rope that other parties will give you is like, okay, things might get worse for you, but there'll be someone else below you and will make their lives even worse, right? And you can take great joy in the fact that the people that you don't like for like whatever reason are really, really struggling. And, in your mind, you can be like, oh, it's their fault and stuff like that. But like ultimately, everyone's way of life kind of is just getting sort of worse and harder to finance and so on and so on. What Farage, I think, has realized was that, yeah, like you can sort of build a political movement around not just being miserable, but making other people's lives miserable. And there will be lots of people who will just kind of simply enjoy watching suffering, right? And in the way that like, he sort of brushed off his kind of like, the sort of racist things he did in school, not even by way of sort of even saying that, yeah, like, this happened and I was young and I'm sorry. And like the political environment, like, is one that like, I actually like my political movement rejects and like wholeheartedly, because also to say that you reject it is just kind of be like, well, you're rejecting like your MP who just a few weeks ago went on like TV to say that there were too many like non-white people in advertisements and then had like members of the party defending her, right? Including like runners in the press being like, yeah, actually like she was right. And what she actually meant was that like, DEI is sort of like taken over everything and become too woke. It's like, no, she said very directly what she means. You don't need to sort of like buttress it in anything, kind of like, you don't need to try add nuance to it. She said what she meant very, very directly. And I think his big gamble is this very much like you can kind of, you can take people's anger and you can take people's frustration, but you can also take this kind of like the sort of broader political consensus that he emerges out from, where he's like, you don't actually have to make anything better. No one's asking you, no one's asking the Reform Party to do that. They are actually, if anything, like, the most sort of like fervent reform supporters just want other people's lives to be worse. They're obsessed with mass deportations. They're obsessed with like, cutting whatever benefits are left. They're obsessed with like kind of getting rid of public transport. Like all these things that will demonstrably make people's lives worse. That's what they're for. And his movement in many ways is like the easiest vehicle in order to establish that. So yeah, there is absolutely a through line that goes from like his childhood up to now. But I feel like the way in which other media outlets haven't quite recognized what's going on is going to be like, I mean, this has sort of been the case for a long time. And so in many ways, this is like a continuation. What I think is interesting is like, maybe like 20 years ago, this could have been something that would have been a real, like, it could have done some real damage to him. And the fact that like, it's kind of been a bit of a squib. I'm not saying that it hasn't had any impact at all, but I do think that like the impact that like, the Labour Party believe it will have will be so minimal. And that's not even really because of like Farage's charisma or anything, or the fact that like people really like reform. It's just the fact that like the environment in which Farage thrives in is one in which like the Labour Party and the Tories and like basically every party except for the Greens and maybe the Lib Dems are very much kind of like, they very much have a desire to maintain that.
I can't believe my school bullies have unionized.
But also, when you read, right, well, The Guardian published an interview with another former pupil, Jean-Pierre Lihoux, who claimed that he heard Farage making racist and anti-Semitic comments and singing "Gas Them All" at Jewish pupils or chanting Oswald Mosley in the playground.
To be clear, when like a lot of this stuff that he's accused of is from when he was a prefect, mind you, in the sixth form in upper sixth. So like when he was like 17 or 18.
He would sidle up to me and growl, "Hitler was right," or gas them, and add a long hiss to simulate the sound of gas showers.
And it's like, name me a single person who cannot envision Nigel Farage still doing that now.
Oh, 100%. But they also said that he was the leader of a group of teenagers who would wait for Jewish boys as they came out of prayers to taunt them. Or he would say, to African students, like, that's the way back to wherever you came from, and so on and so on. And, the thing is about Nigel Farage is, and again, this is where I think, British journalism, it wins its massive credulity award, is it's not just that that's part of the background, it's that that's what he's selling. It's like, that's already priced in. The idea that he's and by saying, ultimately the argument being, he was rude. Essentially, he was far too rude. Because that's what it boils down to, which is he said things he shouldn't have said, not this is one person who is at the head of a movement that genuinely believes these things. And in order to safeguard everybody who lives here, they need to be stopped. But rather, you said the no words, right? Is that all of the thrill that people get from, I never want anyone to tell me I can't say the no words again because I'm 12.
Yeah, the thing that made him as a teenager decide to sort of like brand himself as like the school neo-Nazi.
And like all of that's what is being advertised. So what you're doing is it's like you're saying to someone they shouldn't smoke because, the cigar smoke makes a room smell bad.
Looks just as cool when you do it, etc.
Yeah, it may look cool, but it does annoy people around you. And there are a lot of people who are like, really? Both? It does both things? Amazing.
So you're telling me you're triggered and owned?
Yeah, well, kind of. And, the idea that this is some kind of revelation, because as you guys were saying earlier, this has been known about in the public domain for a while. It's just everyone's started to care about it now that it's frankly too late for it to make any of a difference. And also like Farage is still in some sense flailing, but in another much more real sense, actually, I think fighting back kind of effectively because he's denying it. He's denying it up until the point where basically I think 28 of his former schoolmates have come forward and been like, yeah, this guy's a Nazi piece of shit. And then he said, okay, well, maybe it happened. I didn't mean anything by it. All of these people are politically motivated anyway. All 28 of these people were politically motivated. And then he said, I've never engaged in racist behavior with intent, which Dick Wolf, Law and Order, racist intent. Let's make a picture. So he said, have I said things 50 years ago that you could interpret as being banter in a playground?
Your Honor, Dulwich College Upper Sixth is a lot like a comedy podcast in that it's got like pace to it. And sometimes you lose yourself in the bit and you say something that's just the cheapest, dumbest shot and you don't necessarily mean it. And on that basis, I think I should be given grace. Listen, I am the only person on earth equipped to compare Dulwich College Senior School and doing comedy bits and doing banter, right? No one else has like come from Dulwich College to being funny, right? It's never happened. It just isn't. It just wasn't. It never has been. he was just a fucking little Nazi.
Yeah, and so he also says, have I said things 50 years ago that you could interpret as being banter in a playground, that you could interpret in the modern light of day in some way? Of course. But have I been part of an extremist organization or engaged in direct, unpleasant personal abuse on that basis? No.
Now listen, you might have me banterites on this stuff, but what about a bunch of other stuff that would be harder to prove?
Yeah, you could never prove that I was in the National Front from the years 1976 to 1992.
That's true. We could never prove that.
Yeah, those are just random dates I guessed. I grabbed that as a joke to lawyers listening. Farage also said, I've never directly racially abused anybody. He's also fighting back. He's saying it's disgraceful. He's saying it's disgraceful to frame a question linking himself to dictator Adolf Hitler. And it's like, well, hang on a second. You did say he was right. You linked yourself to him. The person who linked you to Adolf Hitler was you.
Yeah, it was disgraceful of him to do that.
Yeah, it was disgraceful of you to note that thing I said. But that's the thing. If you are, and I think this really, again, I don't think there's a lesson for the left here, because you only get to do this if you're a Nazi. You only get to do this if you're very right-wing.
And you only get to operationalize this thing that everybody knew about him, but which could never stick, if you are the labor right.
Yeah, because otherwise it's just like, oh, you think everyone's racist, blah, blah, blah. You think everyone's racist. Are you insulting his supporters?
Yeah, what if fucking Zara, say for the sake of it, pulling a name out of a hat, if Zara Sultana had gone with any of this, right, as a real attack line against Farage, the first response would have been, who? And the second response would have been, oh, that crazy Zara Sultana shoots her mouth off again, right? And so too is anyone who doesn't necessarily have the, admittedly waning and kind of farcical institutional power to make this stick as journalism.
Well, and also, I think it comes back to the way I tend to see British political media. They're asking you, and this is more than American political media as well. This is kind of unique to us. Is everyone has a very set role to play, and the role of someone like Zara Sultana or Jeremy Corbyn and Zach Polanski is to be ridiculed, right? Is to everything you say is to be treated with maximum contempt.
Are you suggesting that the British media ecosystem just kind of replicates the dynamics of the Dulwich College playground? Why does the media resemble the school?
Oh my God, I can feel my hair falling out and my t-shirt becoming a turtleneck. So yeah, if you as Zara Sultana or Zach Polanski make this point, then it doesn't matter what you're saying, because you're playing the role of, oh, you just accuse everyone of being racist. You think breakfast is racist, for God's sake, right?
Yeah.
That's your role.
And it's well, if I have 28 witnesses saying that my breakfast racially abused people, I might start concluding that my breakfast was racist.
Or the other thing they would do is they would say, by saying this to him, you're insulting all the millions of people who vote for him by suggesting they would vote for an avowed racist.
You've lost the argument here, because you're not attacking him on his policy. You're going for personality.
You're going for his personality. He has the personality trait of saying, gas them all.
Yeah, exactly. Which is going to shortly to be a protected characteristic under the EHRC.
If it's not, I have some stuff from the EHRC about this as well. I hope you're excited for that great Equalities and Human Rights Commission to do its job. Farage went on saying, and the BBC was very happy to use blackface back then, not just in the black and white minstrel show. They did it in It Ain't Half Hot Mum.
This is such a murdering your parents and then falling on the mercy of the court as an orphan, right? It was society what made me racist, which to an extent is true, sure. Is the BBC racist? Yeah, of course it is. But do we have the kind of common sense to know that the person saying this is a panicked, more racist trying to deflect attention from himself? I would hope so, but I could be disappointed.
Yeah, unfortunately, if you're ever going to have an audience larger than podcast you just started doing one day, I'm afraid you're not allowed to notice that.
No.
Yeah, I'm afraid this is kind of the limit. He says, I can't put up with the double standards of the BBC about what I'm alleged to have said 49 years ago and what you were putting out on mainstream content. So I want an apology from the BBC for virtually everything you did throughout the 1970s and 80s. And it's look, the BBC has a great deal to apologize for from the 1970s and 80s. a great deal. Certainly some of its programming about who will fix it. But but what's he doing? He's just going on the attack, and this is completely, they cannot metabolize it. They cannot metabolize it because their response to him is just going to put them then in the, okay, well, now it's time for the BBC to get made a mockery of and say that they're not in touch with the country, and time for GB News to attack them. There is no way, I think, any of this was not obvious. No way any of it makes really altogether that much difference, except to like dozen or so people who were wavering about reform support genuinely on the basis that like they have a certain immigration number they'd like to hit because they like that particular number, right? There's no universe in which anybody cares about this, because it's just another advertisement to the people that already like him. But asked why Farage had not apologized, as he was urged to do on Sunday by the outgoing head of the government's equalities watchdog, Baroness Kishore Faulkner, Danny Kruger, the Reform MP who defected from the Tories, told Times Radio that Farage contested the allegations, so he can't acknowledge what he doesn't believe to be true. Asked about Farage's comments, Faulkner said she felt, quote, confused and disturbed. You have a situation where, when you read these allegations in terms of what's attributed to him, it looks utterly ghastly on paper, but then you try to contextualize it and you think, this is 50 years ago, you know, young people say all sorts of things.
I love Kishore Faulkner's peace, love and understanding turn. I just think it's in many ways one of the crueler things that Nigel Farage has done lately, it seems, since getting out of school, is to take Baroness Faulkner away from her true love of foaming transphobia. That's what she wants to be talking about, and you're making her like deal with actual racism just because she was in charge of the Equality and Human Rights Commission. What does this have to do with equality and human rights? Equality and human rights is about gender policing the bathrooms.
Yeah, exactly. This is not about whether or not there is no commission, and there should not ever be a commission, I guess, to figure out if the putative next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom ever had a gas them all phase.
Nah, I wouldn't think so. I don't think that really relates to equality or human rights.
No, nor commissions even.
No.
She said, there was, however, she said, an element that she did not understand. The one thing that sadly confuses me about him, and I hear his contextualization of it all, why can't he just offer an apology for any distress he would have caused, even if he genuinely didn't mean it?
I wonder, could it be because he means it and he likes it and he's going to keep doing it? I mean, just a thought. I appreciate the sort of like responsibility and the kind of caution here. Again, to have been brought in as a kind of like hired gun for an institution to reconfigure British society in a way that is like deeply insane to any person who ever has to implement it, of being like, you have to like kick trans women out of all of your shit, to then be like, oh, I couldn't, possibly impugn Nigel Farage. It's, but I have concerns.
Yeah, it's like she's being like, Nigel, I am prepared to maximize the amount of benefit of the doubt that you could get.
Yeah, in many ways, it's like, as your lawyer, I am advising you to like do a fulsome apology. And for some reason, he won't do it.
Yeah, and then Stephen Pollard has written that, of course, Nigel Farage is not an extremist. He says it's important to remember. Stephen Pollard, of course, editor of Jewish Chronicle.
I understood anti-Semitism to be a kind of grievous poison that is like omnipresent in British political life. And, obviously we had to sort of like get rid of Corbyn on that basis because, he could have been prime minister, for God's sake, right? And if you're going to be maybe prime minister, you should be above suspicion, right? And not only do you have to have a sort of guarantee to people that you're not personally anti-Semitic, but also that you won't tolerate those who are, right? And so in that case, on that basis, like not being sort of effective enough at rooting out anti-Semitism in the Labour Party meant that he could never be prime minister. But Reform, though, I understand they're fine, right?
Well, let me see. I'm sure Stephen Pollard has a pretty good argument for this. Let me see what he says. He says, I was at a London private school at the same time. Anti-Semitic abuse was common. One classmate, now a city bigwig who is doubtless proud of his institution's commitment to diversity, smeared a pork pie in my gym bag. Did the insults and abuse upset me? Initially, but it was soon so common that it became something I barely noticed.
Jesus Christ.
Okay. And the point of this then is bygones are bygones. Boys will be boys.
Yeah. Boys will be boys is it. He says casual racism was normal. We've moved on along then and rightly look back in horror at behavior that was normal.
But not too much horror. Not enough horror that would sort of demand that he, resign or anything.
Well, also like you're looking, I guess there's like a kind of energy field around, I want to say 1996. Maybe 2000, where
Yeah.
anything from before then is the past, and we look back on the past, but that's different people than now, right?
Gotcha.
That's past Nigel Farage, who was a past person, and this is present Nigel Farage, who's a different guy. They're just similar.
That clears it all right up for me.
Yeah, and there's also like a type of anti-Semitism that is like, you know, purely fixed in the past and like something that it shouldn't be taken seriously. While at the same time, there is another type of anti-Semitism, which is an ancient prejudice that can only sort of truly be understood by walking through Whitechapel Market.
Well, Nigel Farage isn't Muslim enough to be inherently anti-Semitic, right? It's not in his DNA. That's a step away from the argument here. Like, I think it's like implicit in it is, well, no, he's not like anti-Semitic as like a kind of like a racial trait. It's just like a quirk that he had.
Well, it was a quirk of the time because, you know, and also like the thing is, if you were to imagine, I don't know, future Farage, you know, the future Farage who will be like, you know, the leader of whatever version of reform has like its sort of horrible old guy. If he's in sixth form right now, maybe at Dulwich College even, you know, probably what he's doing is he might be like, you know, taunting students about Gaza, for example. Yeah. Because what you're trying to do, and I think what you're trying to do in that case is you are trying to be maximally horrible to people you think are beneath you, you know?
And I mean, I will say Dulwich College, great place to learn to do that. Really sort of inculcates you with a lot of history and tradition to really just facilitate those interactions.
Yeah. And so, you know, I mean, that what I'm driving at here as well is like, he might have just grabbed that like gas them all anti-Semitism because it was in the currents of the air at the time, and the same person now would probably be a sort of virulent Islamophobe.
Yeah, I mean, it was of a time. This is the point that I will give to Stephen Pollard. It was of a time when every like white person who was famous had a flirtation with the National Front, bar the Clash. Like David Bowie was getting racist with it. It was a weird time, but that's the opposite of an excuse. That's an indictment.
And also, it's like whatever direction it went, it bespeaks ultimately again the thing that's really there, which is not about not saying the bad words, but that's about genuinely your belief that there are people who can be easily marked out, who are hierarchically lower, and therefore who should be abused or who should be hurt by the law or whatever, right?
Yeah, or just humiliated, I would say. That's the key thing is I would take it as a kind of like attack on dignity more than anything else.
Let's go back to Paul. Maybe Pollard pulls it out. Maybe he turns it around. He says, are we really going to judge and damn people based on awful things they said when they were children? You know, 18-year-old children who've not really changed that much except in tone, especially when those things were said at a time when sensitivities were very different. It's as if we consider Keir Starmer to want Britain to be a Soviet totalitarian state because he holidayed in Czechoslovakia as a teenager. Yeah, that's exactly
that's the
right.
thing that is said of Keir Starmer, and it's like similarly cooked. I don't know. The whole thing is infuriating because, as I say, you don't need to sort of go back very far in the archives to be like Nigel Farage is a racist, right? Yeah. All this is doing, this is like background information about his like racist origin story. It's like we've completed his racist loyalty quest, and now we get his like sort of racist law dump. And it's like none of that should even be important because he should be unelectable based on the things that he says and believes now. And the reason why he isn't is because of decades of compromise in his favor.
And Pollard goes on, it's clear what's going on here. An attempt to portray Farage as far right. Yeah, you know, it's crazy. This attempt to portray the Hitler was right guy as far right. Crazy.
I have this attempt to portray the sky as being blue.
I'm attempting to locate this fork in this kitchen, and thus reform is some kind of British version of the French National Rally.
That's interesting. Are those guys hanging out together? Are they friends? Are there a bunch of photos of them? Like, is there an increasingly obvious sort of international, like a kind of fascist international that they're both in? Because if there was, then it would be kind of an apt comparison, I would say.
I mean, look, Stephen Pollard's a very busy journalist. Do you think he has time to Google?
That's true. Yeah. That is true.
Yeah, but
we're all busy. I get that.
Yeah, is he still on Hinge? Is he still dating?
I think he had a rough time on the apps, you know, which is not. I get it, you know.
Of course, for anyone who may have forgotten this, Stephen Pollard wrote what is, I think, the canonical.
The whiniest fucking article I've ever read. There are too many anti-Zionists on Tinder and Hinge for me to get a date.
Yeah, it is. This is up there in like the article pantheon of like whiny conservative articles. No, he says, whether you agree with reform or oppose everything about it doesn't alter the fact that it is a mainstream party led by a mainstream politician with mainstream supporters.
It has been mainstreamed. It is not mainstream by accident. It didn't like fall on the earth like a meteor.
Yeah, also, like when it was like all the stuff was being leveraged on Corbyn, it's like, well, Labour were a mainstream party.
Yeah. Would you say that like sort of Corbyn supporters had very real concerns, and it was like insulting to them to dismiss Corbyn off of like sort of personal attacks?
No, we were activists or worse, extremists.
Sure.
Yeah. No,
right.
don't. You know, it's so easy. It's so easy to not know the rules, but you know, this is thankfully we have Stephen Pollard, who taking time off of his busy getting Hedgewell to give us a little lesson on who's mainstream and who's not. Any case, all of this is to say it's always strange sort of doing like 30 minutes of discussion on something where the conclusion is this probably isn't anything, right? Because it's like taking a very long journey to nowhere, but rather it feels a lot of the same gullible columnists probably feel as though this is something. They feel as though this is meaningful. And it's just another bit of the copper wire getting yanked out of they want to talk about the institutions, the sort of general levels of social trust, the idea that there should be any kind of something approaching a standard in public life, these like liberal pillars that have gotten just demolished one after the other, partly because they have no material basis, but also partly because, well, the sort of erstwhile liberals of the last sort of 15, 20, 25 years, you can start counting from more or less whenever you want, have decided that it is inconvenient that these things should be in public life, have made no case for them because they only want to turn to them when convenient. And I'm sorry, just because it's convenient for you to use them now, they have been neglected because you are all complete morons who are utterly short-termist. Sorry.
I think the other aspect of this is also like lots of kind of media types who are really trying to think about what their place will be in a British politics, like increasingly defined by people like Farage and defined by reform. We've seen how like much like language has kind of changed, especially around like migration. The fact that you have like, so-called like respected kind of like analysts and like political commentators and stuff who go on, national TV and national radio and sort of very openly talk about like their support for like mass deportations or, expressing concerns about, white replacement in London or whatever, right? Like these are things that were really kind of untenable until quite recently. And it does sort of reflect, people will sort of say that, this like reflects like reform's dominance in politics. But like, again, I kind of think that actually like the reverse is true. Like reform is sort of a response to, again, like a very hostile, and aggressive, political environment that has very much been defended by, the mainstream political parties. Like I would probably wager like post 2008, but like, particularly in recent years and particularly after Brexit, where like the failures of Brexit, the failures of like the exiting the European Union were sort of constantly sort of like, the blame of that was constantly put on like various groups who kind of prevented, Britain from becoming this kind of, mass force afterwards, like if they sort of believe that or not. Also it's like a reflective of kind of like inequality at its sort of highest point historically and the ways in which that is like continued to be justified. Reform is like a response to all of these things. But I think like one of the, this is something that like, media types, like mainstream media types don't really understand, or they sort of have an unwillingness to understand. But that's partly because British media is so insular and it's so kind of, very much about like who you know and what parties and what dinners you go to, that there's no actual incentive to really interrogate like the system in which, journalists kind of operate in this country. And I think all of that is sort of important because I think Farage is like the one who really recognizes that and has spent a very long time sort of like building or at least sort of contributing to like an alternate media system that is like a lot more influential than, your sort of mainstream newspaper columnists and your like BBC News reports and stuff. And I think what we're going to see and what we're going to continue to see are lots of like mainstream media types either trying to figure out whether they have a place in this new media economy where they are far less influential than, the reactionaries on GB News and, they're sort of increasingly radical, like younger conservative talking heads who they sort of let run rampant on YouTube. Or whether like, what I guess the choice that they have to make is like, well, do you sort of bend the knee for Farage, which I think many of them will do. Some already have, but I think we'll see more of that kind of coming in the next kind of few years. Or will they sort of bow out because they kind of recognize that there is no place for them anymore? And so this is very much like a crisis of media that very sort of like predictably Farage kind of realized quite early on. And now these guys are sort of playing catch up while also sort of being in denial about what's going on.
Oh, well, I think they sound pretty well set up for it. So all the best, guys.
Look, I'm sure Rory Stewart's got something up his sleeve. Like he knows what he's doing.
Be fine.
Oh, 100%.
Be fine.
Anyway, I think that's probably about time for us today, but I want to, of course, thank everybody for listening. Remind you that there will be another episode this week on the Patreon where I hope to be discussing the Netflix Warner Brothers or not deal. So do check that out.
In the process of scheduling the next Left on Red with Matthew Lubchansky about Matthew Lubchansky's graphic novel Simplicity, which you should buy. Spoilers, it's very good. We'll talk about it soon.
Mm-hmm. And also, sorry, we know it hasn't been out recently. There's been a lot of things going on, but we are going to put it out.
I forgot how to read again.
Yeah. Sorry. All right. Cool. All right. See you there. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.